Thank you all for coming. I'm Deborah Schneer. I've lived in North Adams for the past 25 years, with my husband Stuart Burns for the past 20, and our adorable crazy golden retriever Luna for 1.5 years. We are all residents of this beautiful city. Thank you for coming. The City of North Adams is working with Mass Audubon and the Mohawk Trail Woodlands Partnership to log 70 acres that straddle the Bellows Pipe Trail and encroaches on the Notch Reservoir, which provides the city with its drinking water. The city has held several public meetings in the last couple of months where the loggers have presented their reasons for the operation. Concerned citizens have repeatedly asked for an opportunity to present an alternative point of view in council chambers, but the city has ignored these requests. So the Friends of the Notch and Bellows Pipe Trail got together and decided to have our own presentation, offering a different point of view on how to care for the woodlands and the reservoir. We feel it is important to hear from experts other than those already vested in the project. And that is what you will hear tonight. I also must tell you that up until now, there has been no meaningful community involvement in the deliberations on how to protect the forest and the reservoir. Like many others, I first learned about it in early August through a Facebook post of Lori Bradley, who started our group. But in fact, the plans were in the works for almost 3 years. Publicity was minimal. To my knowledge, until this past July, there was just one public meeting in September of 2022. And if you hadn't heard or read about it, well, that was just your tough luck. Had people known then what we know now, this conversation would have started much earlier. So now, I would like to introduce you to our moderator, Walt Kudnohovsky. Walt is a career and still active landscape architect and community planner with some considerable experience with forests and conservation. He is the sole founder of the Graduate School of Landscape Design, Conway School, author, watercolor artist, and a lover of trees. He is particularly upset when there are hidden agendas and misrepresentations. He is a graduate of Michigan State University and Harvard's Graduate School of Design. He lives on 97 acres of conserved land in Asheville, Mass., and he works hard to do all things well, and especially when it comes to treating nature well. Thank you.
We need to thank Lori for getting us together and bringing us to this meeting. We are, as a team, just getting to know each other. So most of our conversation has been by virtual, by Zoom, and so it's a pleasure for us to, in some cases, here meet each other for the first time. My job is to continue the introduction of who we are, and I'm going to ask each of the members who are here and are willing to stand up and say their names really clearly, and just one little point or two about why you're putting so much energy into and concern into the forest. So we've already met Deborah, maybe. Yeah.
I'm Lori Bradley. I live on Reservoir Road, and I just love the Notch. I love it since we moved here. We moved here about, I think we moved here 2018. So.
I am Devin Raber. I live on Notch Road. I am concerned about climate change and my son's future.
I'm Stuart Burns, and I live in North Adams. I grew up in Williamstown, and I always loved hiking up Mount Greylock. And I'm very involved in climate justice as a teacher and a practitioner.
Hi, I'm Michaela LaPointe. I'm doing this because Bellows is really important to me, and it's our drinking water, and we need to keep that safe.
And I am I live in North Adams because up in that garden, but I'm also spending a lot of time on this plan, putting it out, because it doesn't make sense. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'll be talking to you more about that later on.
Are there others of you out there that I can't see? I'm extending Deborah's welcome and thank you, and have you note that there is a website. This event and other important information, at least in our eyes, is on that website. So if you can remember the name, you might want to. We're here with a couple of purposes. We're especially here to see if we can expand our numbers, because we're discovering there's lots of things that can be done, not all of which we can do ourselves. So we're looking to expand who we are, and we're concerned, of course, about the Bellows Pipe Trail, and we have a message for the outside loggers that exist on the trail. No trespassing, please. Before moving on, I'm going to further introduce the committee, the friends, by talking about several points that really bring us together. This isn't the exclusive list, but it's among the more important things. And we do not consider ourselves as naysayers of the project. We recognize fully that wood products are going to be an important part of any society and moving forward, and that has to happen. We're saying it doesn't have to happen in this location. We think the site is especially fragile. The more we study it, the more we know that's true. We all know that it's a water resource. The water supply for 12,000 people. But it's a wet site as well, with several perennial streams, wetlands, and whatever that aren't really being accounted for in this process. We think the city officials may be well-intended but are misinformed, and so we want to check in on the correction of that if we have the opportunity. This is an experiment, admitted, a first time for this group, for this kind of logging on this very precious place. And we're wondering out loud with some venom, why does it have to be an experiment on this fragile and special place? You know, we also are concerned because the money seems all to be leaving the town. Essentially, if you look at the bottom line, even in the report, the town will be left in a negative position financially with the money that does come to the town after they pay for the things that are required. And that's without paying for any road damage that might be done by all of the trucks that are going to be going up and down, and equipment. And there's a growing set of science research papers and so on that we talked about a bit later that suggest, or more than suggest, prove that the best carbon sequestration are for maturing, and especially old growth forests. This one could become an old growth forest if it isn't harvested, but sustaining forest at a young perpetual stand does not produce the most carbon, and that's being proclaimed, even though they acknowledge that old growth forests do a really great job. But what they don't say is how exponentially greater older forests do in terms of carbon sequestration. So the question about climate-sensitive plant has to be put up. We're also concerned about that it is seen through the lens of logging, and there's a strong imprint or thumbprint of logging on this plan and the agencies that are proposing it. And so that thumbprint suggests that every forest, including the Notch, has to be a producer of wood. That's its job. And we're wondering seriously about that. They've not made the claim that this is a totally unhealthy or diverse forest, because it really is. Should we show you an image of the sky in the fall, the number of different colors of trees, you just recognize that at the tree level, and at every level it's a diverse and healthy operational forest as it is. We do not need to do anything to make it more so. In fact, any kind of intervention will distress and reduce the diversity of the forest. Very important, and I suspect most of you in this room, is that the Bellows Falls Trail. I'm a landscape architect, and I know how wide the equipment is. The equipment will be at least 8.5 feet wide to 9.5 feet. It needs extra room because of its size. The trucks, so the trail that we now know will have to be doubled. That means, and the ditches and the downslopes will have to be increased so that the width of it is going to be the same size and dimension that you use to drive every day between Williamstown and North Adams. It's a 22 to 24-foot road, clear cut. Lots of trees will be down. They're not marked currently, so there's no distraction, but they will have to go, including landings on the trail. 3 of them, 2 or so acres totally cleared and leveled on the trail, so that the Bellows Falls Trail, as you know it, will not exist in the future. It'll be a road. Drinking water, specific to this road, the DCR and this logging operation is exempt from the wetlands regulations and control. They don't have to mark them on the land, they are not marked, so buffer zones are not marked. And so the determination of where wetlands are done on the back of a machine driving up and down the hillside. And we object as well to the purposeful, in our eyes, misrepresentation that this isn't really a climate smart plan. And it goes from there. So the more we dig in, the more upset we get. If we need to set solid alignment, at least to see if we can slow or stop this project. I wanted to check in the room, how many of you are North Adams people? Lots of hands, and a good 2/3 of you. How many are in local nearby towns? Okay. How many, are there any city officials or representation in the room? Okay. Okay, so we're going to move to our first speaker. That's Lori Bradley. And Lori, we're discovering, not only is a really founded artist in this area, but she has got a strong voice, and of course we're together because she has a leadership capacity, a clear voice, and really strong ability to articulate, and we're finding out more every day. She, I hope, will further introduce herself and share the thoughts that she has. Thank you.
Okay, like I said before we moved here in 2018, we're here part of the year. My husband and I, who's running the camera back here, are both art professors at UMass institutions, and we live in the city when we're not here, and so it's such a relief to come up here, be on Reservoir Road. It was just like heaven. When we moved here, we were so happy to find this. And it has been until this year, when we found out about this in this summer, July. We saw an article in iBird that was talking about a climate forest and sustainable forest around the Notch. And I was thinking, what is wrong with the Notch forest? And it also just smacked of logging. My family, my father's family were all loggers, and my father left that business. He decided he didn't want to be involved with that anymore. So that was something we discussed a lot at home, because in the town that we ended up living in, we did work against logging projects that would have taken away some of our town forests that the scouts love to be in. So I just read that and thought, oh no, I think I know what's coming. And so I started to look into it, and it was the case. I wrote to Chris Matera, who we have handouts from, who's an activist from, I think it's Springfield?
Northampton.
Where?
Chris is in Northampton.
Northampton. And we had that beautiful website, and it just confirmed all my fears about what was going to happen. It's threatened by logging in November 2024. As soon as I read what he had written, I realized this is happening all over, right across the Mohawk Trail and all of the Berkshires, these little patches of beautiful forest land being taken for logging, because the logging interests really have run out of their own private land. They've been logged over, and now they're looking for public land, and they're also looking for private owners to donate land, or not donate, but to sell land back to them for logging, for management. So that was a wake-up call, and I realized by reading more materials, doing more research with our group, I did a Facebook page and got a great response from all sorts of wonderful people that had knowledge and interest and passion about this place. And they started sending in information. So that finally, by pulling some of the paperwork from the city, we realized the logging plan is supposed to start this November. This is the Bellows Pipe Trail right at the beginning of the Bellows by Reservoir Road. Both sides of this trail will be completely stripped of trees, like Walter just talked about for this wide road. Okay, here's the plan. I don't know if any of you've seen this, if you walked on the Bellows, but Mass Audubon has these signs up all over the place. And they've got a clear cut 4 acres, number 2, that's right along the road, Reservoir Road, going up to Mount Greylock, which why they want that to look like a muddy mess for all the visitors that come through there is beyond me. Number 1 is a selection harvest, which means taking out the forest canopy. And they're gonna have crisscrossing logging roads, as you'll see from Dean's presentation all through that, which means most of that will be logged out, denuded, basically. And then there's other clear cuts, 4, 5, 3. 3A is herbicides treatment. We heard about the fact that they were going to be using glyphosate. I can't even say that word. Roundup to take out the existing weeds. We went to the CONCOM meeting about that, and we were just so many people showed up for that. It was wonderful from the Facebook page, and the council decided to vote against using that. So for now, we're safe from that. In future, we may have to face that again because Mass Audubon wants to have a 10-year plan for this place, which may mean herbicides in the future. This is our sole water supply, the Notch Reservoir. Runs down to the Williams Reservoir, not too far away. These are the planners, City of North Haven. Mass Audubon will be doing this demonstration forest, which is basically going to be, we'll see some pictures of the kind of demonstration forests they do. It all sounds very nice, but the Mohawk Trail Woodlands Partnership and the New England Forestry Foundation. Ultimately, we ask why, and it's sad, but it comes back to logging for profit. So we don't know the exact numbers, but from what has happened in other cities, generally, this city is getting $40,000 back from the logging project. No local foresters, as far as we know, will be employed on this. Timber is going to be sold out of the state, likely to Quebec. $800 is the non-local profit after milling the wood from our forest. It's 20 times what the town is usually paid back on these projects. So after it goes to Quebec, gets milled, it'll come back and be sold on the timber market. 800,000, sorry. 20 times. Thank you, Walter. And that's what usually happens. It was just sad to learn about this. This is an oak tree that sits, this is Mark Malcolm on the Bellows Trail. Nice middle-aged oak getting on towards being potentially an old growth oak. So the city, when they found out everybody was upset, decided to have a forum for us at City Council. We asked if we could have some non-logging people to speak about the ecology and the environment there. They refused to let us do that, even though we wanted to have William Newman, who's a well-known professor from Williamstown, who's an ecology expert. Pro-forestation is his, he won a Nobel Prize for writing about that. Keeping old growth, middle growth forests intact with climate change is the best way to go. They would not let him speak. They wouldn't let us speak at the city. We had to be here, which this church has been fantastic letting us have this place. We had to come here to let forum and have an opposing point of view. So what they had at their forum was called Timber Speak by Chris Matera. He's got a wonderful handout over there if you haven't picked that one up at the end of the table, and a wonderful website about it. Deceptive language, a lot of euphemisms, misrepresentations, developed by the logging industry over the past 18 years or so, when they knew what they wanted to expand into public land, to get people to give up their public land and private lands for logging. And the climate smart forestry is all about logging, trying to convince people that this is really good for the climate, to take out the sheltering trees, to take out the old growth trees so new ones can grow. But most responsible science shows that that's actually the opposite's true. It takes 30 years for a new seedling to grow, not to sequester enough carbon. 30 years, right now we're in a 30-year climate emergency. So if we're waiting 30 years for those trees to grow back, we're skipping a big opportunity to help with climate change with old growth forests, middle-aged forests. So all these words, and you hear them all the time at these forums they've been having. Demonstration forest, climate resilient forest, stewardship is a big word for logging, forest management. Have any of you heard these from people telling me? Climate adaptation logging, forest transitioning is what they're saying we need here, and selective harvesting. This is a picture of herbicide use on Mount Washington in Egremont. This summer, they did this without telling the locals. A woman that's trying to come out against this project down there walked up this path and saw all that was taken out with herbicides, and this is also on a watershed for drinking water. And then she's, went to the city to do battle, but the deed was already done. So here's some pictures of climate smart forestry. It means cutting trees. This is Savoy State Forest, and this was in, I believe, 2010? If it's 2020, in 2010,
Somewhere around there, yeah.
yeah, on the top. So they said this is not a clear cut, this is called a shelter wood cut. And so that's what they're telling them to do here in that yellow area, is that canopy kind of cut. So that's basically everything. They leave a few trees standing in the back, so you don't have to call it a clear cut. Audubon, this is Massachusetts Audubon here, cutting their own conservation land in 2020. So this has already started. This is the road behind us on Reservoir Road. This is a logging road that was cut with an agreement between our neighbors, the Crofts, and they wanted to log out their oaks forest. And the city, I don't know how they worked it out, but they agreed to have a crossroad cut down to West Mountain Road. West Mountain Road is now the logging road that they're going to be using partially for the Notch clear out. So this is the road going over to the Notch. And this is this summer. This is after 2 weeks of relatively dry weather. We have these standing pools that collect mosquitoes, and they just never go away. Here is going down West Mountain Road. This is my neighbor's private property. You can see there's a posted sign right there. They cut a 20 to 30 foot turnaround gash into their property. Didn't respond when they were complained to. Then this turn goes down West Mountain Road, and it's a steep hill. It's hard to tell from the photo. So here it is at the bottom. They just sort of pushed all the trees into this island, and then here's more really deep. These are 3 or 4 foot long mud walls along the side of the road now that go directly downhill onto Reservoir Road with all this mud slick flowing down there whenever it rains and down into people's Devon's basement over on the other road, Notch Road. So my neighbor is always clearing out his driveway, digging it back out, and that's been since this has happened. Here's a picture of the Notch, the entrance coming from the Reservoir Road. It's been enjoyed by generations of residents and tourists for hiking, biking, fishing, walking. It's also got a historical background with Thoreau and Emerson both walking this trail on their way to Mount Greylock. There's graveyards back there. It's a beautiful historical site. It's home to a lot of diverse wildlife. There's songbirds, raptors, we see owls. There's a pair of nesting bald eagles on the other side of the reservoir. And it's got all sorts of these little orange newts, hats, and they live underground, just under the leaves and the pine needles before they turn green and then move into the water for that's their full life cycle. So these are all like adolescent newts that will be dug out of there. There's so many back there. It just makes me sad. I'm always rescuing them off the road. And it just like kills me that they're going to be sort of backhoed. So this is also a peaceful forest in a residential neighborhood. It's residential, R1, R2, rural residential. So this is actually an industrial scale logging project when you look at the future plans. After they cut these 70 acres, they plan to continue. And it's the only drinking water supply, as far as we know, for North Adams. We already have the muddy runoff, and our road is corroding and can't really support the logging trucks. It was also voted the best fall hiking trail this year by Condé Nast Traveler. So why they're going to do this there is a mystery. We don't know why it's going there. Why would they ruin that? It's a tourist attraction. Bikers and hikers come from all over. I was at the top of Mount Greylock this summer doing a painting class, and I've met people from Australia, England, all coming up through the Bellows and walking up through this parking lot. So for some reason, they want this there. I'm not sure if it's to publicize this Audubon demonstration forest. We don't know why, and it's impossible to find out from the city. So here's just some forestry myths. I got this from Chris's website for the most part, but we've all heard this at the city forum, and we were taught to. People were taught to by the loggers and the logging interests. The management plan will generate young trees. Well, you know, here's one of their cuts in the Sandusfield State Forest. It looks like a lot of young trees cut and left to rot there. So I don't think that's their main concern. Also, our forests, if you look at pictures or if you walk through the Notch, you can see all age classes of trees, very young seedlings, saplings, full-size trees, and mature trees. The forestry myth, the young, healthy seedlings planted will make the forest naturally more efficient at capturing carbon. Most scientists believe that that's not the case, that trees have to become middle-aged before they do that. And they're taking out trees at that age that are prime for capturing carbon right now. And this is even somebody at the national level, a forestry expert, saying our old-growth forests provide a straightforward way to fight climate change, safeguard clean water and air, create unmatched recreational experiences, and are a habitat for rare species, all of which is the case at the Notch. And here's a picture of October Mountain, also down towards Egremont after a logging operation there. And I think that was 2008. And it's just a big clear cut. Forestry myth, Massachusetts foresters are licensed by the state, and foresters are dedicated to studying and improving the health of our forests. We've been told that. It's all for us. They're doing that for us. This is all something we should enjoy. This is the Notch Reservoir. When we were up here during COVID, we had to teach online. So after that experience, which wasn't something I didn't really love, but we walked down to the Notch to relax, and it was just always changing every day. It was so beautiful. But anyway, the forestry fact is that a tree procurement the forester's salary depends on procuring the best wood at the cheapest price. So here's logging at the Quabbin Reservoir. In 2009, you can see the kind of trucks and the side cuts that they're going to be bringing into the Notch. It's a very delicate area with streams running on the ground. They bring in these big backhoes, big chains, tires, to rip up the trees and then move them out. Massachusetts forests are choked with stagnant red pine and Norway spruce, foreign species plantations. So you can see this is the Notch. These are what they're talking about when they are accusing the red pine and Norway spruce of, being bad trees for the area. That's all going to be clear cut. This is in the winter, and you can see they look pretty healthy to me. They said they're declining. But the forestry fact is that even state resource agencies have praised these plantations from the 1930s and 40s of red, white, and Norway spruce. White pine as being important wintering grounds for animals, and also offsetting other habitat trees that are declining, and keeping our water clean is why they were planted. But now they're logging down those trees that were planted to protect the water supply at Quabbin, and they plan to do that here. Another forestry myth, forest management plans help sustain healthy, vibrant forests throughout the Commonwealth. This is the Quabbin after clear cutting, they call it patch cutting. And it creates a fragmented forest where animals of certain species have trouble getting from place to place. It's not the healthiest environment for the forest. And we really don't need this they have a belief that people need to control the forest, the people that are doing this, and we don't need that. Human intervention in all cases, some logging is fine, but forestry myth, logging on public land is for supplying forest products to support the local economy and employment, and we already talked about that. But this picture was also taken in November, and this whole strip here is slated for clear cut. Forestry fact, no local products, no forest products are going to be sold to local people. They go to Canada, like we talked about. Luckily, to come back here and be sold at Home Depot or someplace like that. Climate smart forestry at Muddy Brook State Wildlife. This is after management area. Forestry myth, flattening the forest is good for songbirds. For some reason, we've heard that a lot this week. I don't know, we have a lot of songbirds if you've been up to the Notch and along the trail, and there's big flocks of these yellow birds that come through, a lot of pollinators. There's a lot of fields around us already. There's a lot of farms mixed in with the forest here, so taking up the forest is actually going to be destructive. And clear cutting, selection harvesting decimates habitat for all birds and really all animals. And a few more, just the forestry facts. Here's the pictures of the skidders and chain trucks, and I don't know what those things are called, I can't think of it. Logs and put them on the trucks, but these are all, this is moist lake forest, and they're all heading to the back of this wood. But actually, forest tourism produces 10 times more income, and we have that forest tourism here. So we're asking, why is this happening here? Why is this happening on this particular trail? And we have one person that's putting this forth in the city that doesn't butt this property directly with his house, and we're wondering why that is even allowed to happen. There's just too many questions with this particular project. Because once it's gone, it's gone. And here's the email. I forgot to print them out in the pages I have back there, but if you want to send a letter to our mayor and Tim Scarborough, Commissioner of Public Services, we have until the 30th for a public comment time. And if you send them your commentary, at least it will be taken into consideration because they did open up a new commentary period for us, because that was closed in 2022. Okay, so Dune's going to talk more about, or do you want to introduce? Sure. And let me just get
Thanks,
this out.
Nicole.
Sure.
It's pretty easy to tell. Sharon wants to group is a really value-centered caring for trees and forests. And Boone Mackay will also share that. I've discovered one little thing. When you go for a hike with Dune, you end up on your knees, putting on your glasses, looking really carefully, and pointing out, seeing things you've never seen before, and then she names it for you. And if she doesn't know the name, you'll soon know it. But anyway, this is Dune Mackay.
You want to try the mic? You'll have to put,
Louder.
has to be pretty close to your mouth.
So, as I started to say earlier, I live in my homes partly because I value, so about 12 years ago, I had the opportunity for my job for promotion to move to New York City and also with other career things, and I decided not to go because here in North Adams, any part of the city, even if by the places where I lived in teeny tiny apartments before I could afford something nicer, you're only a mile's walk from lovely forests, so that's really valuable to me, probably the most appealing. So, one thing that I really dislike is when the rhetoric doesn't match what's being described. So I got interested in this plan when I heard Gloria. I put something on Facebook. On Facebook, it's actually once a month, these once a month. And that particular night, there was going to be conservation initiative about the state news, so I thought I'd show up. And I went, since then, that was August 5th, since then I have spent pretty much all my time outside of work, and a bit of time that I shouldn't have during that, trying to figure this plan out. I've gone to many meetings, I've gone to all the city meetings, I've gone to the meetings like the Women's Trail Partnership that are public. I've gone to Ashfield to hear a variety of experts, and I've been out in the woods every chance I got, with plan in hand, trying to figure things out. And the stated goals of the plan, if you go look at them on the website, if you listen to the foresters, they sound pretty good. all about climate and diversity and nice things, improving wildlife, conserving water quality, but the goals don't match the conditions that they describe in our own management plan, and the conditions and the goals don't match the practices that they prescribe, and they don't, some of these things don't match the conditions that I see with my own eyes on the ground. I mean, in some areas, you can tell it's the same general area we're talking about, but there's a lot of discrepancy in really that. So I'm going to take you through some things. Those are the pictures in this presentation of photos that I took myself, at least all the ones of the maps, the ones that I took myself. I got a few for comparison. The stray future photos are from other sources. Let's see. So just to help you orient yourself, this is going to have a lot of maps, and maps you need to know what you're looking at. Here. This is the corner of Notch Reservoir Forest. You go up there, you go up to the top of Mount Bellows. And as you've gotten a little closer to this is the entrance parking area for the bike trail, and you can really see once you've gone through it, there's something for trail. So if you're familiar with the area, that's where we're starting that. And we're just looking at is this little star in the area there. And there is the one you go up to the top of Mount Bellows. And here, this black wedge, this is the reservoir. Okay, so that matched that to this map from the operations plan that was published. Without many changes, latest on this city website is September 12th. And for that little black letters and everything at that, this is Notch Reservoir, this is the entrance, and this is this one green line on that here is Bellows Pipe Trail. So up here, where tiny area you can really see are the treatments prescribed for the large areas. I'm not really going to talk much about the selective harvest in the 60 acres, and I'm not going to talk much about the invasive species treatment over here in this 20 acres. I'm mostly going to talk about things that are easy to take pictures of, which are patch clear cut and shelter repairs and tree cut. So we have the cut and replace, very simple things, 6.5 acres of patch clear cut, 2.5 acres shelter requirements, that must be 9 acres. Here's the clear cut areas, so this is around 50 feet. That's a bark ledge. These trees, I'm doing some guessing, some deduction here. I'm pretty sure that these triple dots mark the edge of the clear cut area. So everything inside that will be cut, removed. And you can see this is how close you are to the water. This is for the red pine plantation, which they say is overstocked. It's 80 years old, and it's got the trees are dead and dying and need to be taken out and replaced for more diversity and another reason. But if you walk, I walked into the middle of this patch yesterday, and I looked up and said, these trunks, these are red pine. We're going to see it there. That's not red pine. That's deciduous trees. There's already succession happening. Where is one of those edge markers? Where is the succession happening? There are other trees moving. Does not need logging assistance. There, okay, so down here, the shelter wood harvest, 2.5 acres. Coming here, shelter wood, as I think the way you described, is basically taking, in this case, they specify they're going to take about 65% of the canopy and replace it with, so they'll leave a few trees to shelter new plantings. Now, they say need to do this because there's insufficient regeneration of, well, there's insufficient regeneration, but and they want to plant oak and hickory, which are timber-friendly species. We already have oak and maple and birch and cherry and ash and quite a variety of things there. So the plan is to take out these little guys and the ones we saw in the earlier picture and replace them at $8 per tree and $5 per tube with oak and hickory from someplace else. And here's how much that will cost. We get a little bit of money for selling as pulpwood and saw logs and trees that are taken out. And we spend something like $40,000, and so the result end result is $33,000 cost. $33,000 the city spends to take away trees and put in more trees. Now, in order to do this, you can't just cut the areas that they specified already. You have to have landing areas, which are where the logging trucks come in and the trees are piled and the pile on the tree and the trucks turn around and go back out. So each one of these landing areas specified on our map is going to be at least an acre of clearing. You can go out there and see the trees marked with tape. The first landing, this was a video. This is a beautiful video. I just did a circle around. You can see you're only 300 feet from the main trail entrance. You can see it from there. This first landing, everything within 50 to 80 feet of this spot. First landing, so this is what land is like. These are photos of land, the quality, also a watershed area. It's not a nice condition. And of course, you have to connect your landing areas somehow. So, the Bellows Pipe Trail, here's the entrance that we currently use. This is what they're going to use for our logging trucks. Here is a picture of the Bellows Pipe Trail. The entrance here is well, standing 20 feet from this sugar area. The trail is around 8 feet as well as the estimated 20 feet is for the road width. The conditional 4 feet for a ditch puts you farther up that hill. So as we've been saying, it sounds like most of these trees along the sides of the road we taken out. We built a ditch to keep the main road accessible for trucks. Here are a couple more pictures of what the Bellows Pipe Trail looks like currently. Nice and dry, adding culverts and ditches is not required, and not improve your experience. There's a picture of the logging road. Okay, a little bit of background. So this watershed area is 10,000 plus acres. It was purchased by the city in 1890 for the purpose of protecting the reservoir. It turns out, as I learned from the management plan itself, that some logging has already been done on the east side, so I'm looking at a slightly different map. There's the entrance we're talking about, here's the reservoir. And here are some existing logging trails. This one right now. I'm going to take a look at these trails. This is fairly high up on the mountain. These are in current use by ATVs. They're not strictly allowed to be there, but that isn't happening. You can see that there's roughly a foot of forest gone. And as you go down farther, it gets wider. And you have to wonder where did all that soil go. Go further down, it gets wider. Look at all those exposed. Go further down, trails meet. Yeah, see there's probably 2 or 3 feet of forest floor gone. Oh, look, here, it's 5 feet of forest floor gone. Again, where did that go? Downstream. These are the little points on the map where I was showing you. So in this case, that line went down into this brook. It was not most of it directly upstream. Some of it was, probably wasn't. Worth noting is that the soils on both sides of the reservoir are fine, deep, sandy loams, extremely stony, very fragile. Since this number of years, essentially same as that, we expected roughly the same amount of mountain generally. Turns out, so now we're back on the west side where the proposed line was. Walt and I walked this pretty carefully. We didn't. So the big trails are here in pink, and the blue is streams. And as far as we can tell, the skid trails are not laid out, except for some movements. Those are yellow. And the wetland stream buffers are not marked on the site, which, as Walt likes to say, means that the person on the big machine, 10 feet high in the air, 6 feet long, as Walt keeps saying, will be making these decisions for himself as he's doing the logging. His role His job is to get trees out as quickly as possible. He's not going to be around here to see what happens to our reservoir. So just a little reminder that on the west side, it's wet. We have streams, we have wetlands, we have slopes, we have culverts that are functioning as perfectly adequately. Here is a tree marked for cutting within 10 feet of this stream. Here is a tree, I'm not quite sure what the marking on this one might be for cutting, or might be a border. But then again, it's very close to a stream. It doesn't seem like a good idea. So, since the speed trails, yeah, they're not laid out on site, but they are roughly indicated where they're going to go. They're going to be essentially linear clear cuts. And here's the linear clear cut, and there's 60 acres of forest. And remember, there's mud, there's somewhere to go, it goes into a reservoir. This on that side of the reservoir, all these streams are running directly downhill into the reservoir. What does that mean? Well, mud, it's a very expensive proposition to take mud out of a reservoir. I don't know how expensive, but it's more than $40,000. So here is the financials that were given to us in this operation plan. Oops, no, so there we go. At the top, there's your $40,000 line. Supposed profit. Here's a couple more other minor things from the pulpwood from the clear cut areas. Here's the cost to replace those trees. Here's some cost for culverts and so food trails. What's the city debt? We have to pay $19,000 to have our trees taken away and our trail ruined. I asked about this at the public information meeting, and there was some hand waving about grants by the people who are promoting these plans. So, New England Forestry Foundation, Bellows Trail Partnership, and the Audubon Society, all of them seem to be completely verified it, but as far as I can tell, they are receiving money from state and federal funds for the purpose of what they call climate smart forestry. It clearly involves taking away trees on their plan for their budgets and their plans.
You may want to stand up and stretch for just a second. We're about to have a treat.
Oh no, I'm just getting this started.
Stretch in place. We're going to have Glenn Ayers will be our next speaker. And we're discovering that Glenn is a long time and very articulate advocate for the very issues that we're talking about. I was thinking about Glenn and the sharing of the interest in trees. I one time, earlier in my life, went to a sayer, and that person said, "You are a direct descendant of the Druids." By that time, the spirits of the forest, I was already collecting trees and painting and drawing trees. And I essentially done that all of my life. So I share an interest in trees, but Glenn shares a real interest in trees. He is not only knowledgeable, he goes after the science, but his values are things he walks every day. You're going to find out that he has a lot to say. He's going to say a little bit about his background when he starts, which was germane to allowing him to say the things he does about his forest. But we're really going to be for a treat and welcome to Glenn here.
I'll try using the microphone, but I have sometimes a big mouth. So I'll use my big mouth. And I've just put up some credentials just so you don't know who I am. Although you may have heard my voice on the local radio station, I do a radio show called The Enviro Show. And I found out about this recently and did an interview with the three folks who are on this forest team. And that played for 3 weeks on the local radio station here in North Adams, WMND, which is a community low-power FM station. I've been doing that radio show for 20 years now. We just started our 20th year. And so I'm a registered sanitarian. I worked as a health agent for Franklin County, where I retired about 5-6 years ago. But during that time, I was also a certified public water supply operator, working with public water supplies. And I was also a certified or licensed wastewater treatment plant operator. So very municipal jobs. And I have a master's degree in soil science. I studied the reclamation of drastically disturbed lands. And I did my master's thesis on an active strip mine that was destroyed. Everything living on it was destroyed. And we were trying to reestablish a forest in that area. And that's enough about me. The two questions that I want to think about tonight are, why is the city trying to log in an area that is called a watershed protection forest? And the land was acquired to protect the water from disturbances such as logging. 100 years ago, everything was pretty much treeless. And the amount of erosion and mudslides, that's why they planted those red pines and other trees to try to stabilize the soil. So they acquired this 1,000 acres to protect the watershed. And it seems counterintuitive. But let's ask that question. And then I also want to talk about what is a reasonable alternative to what's being proposed. So while we're thinking, I'm going to do this in two parts. The first part is why are we logging a watershed protection forest? And so let's try to think about, well, does logging really protect water quality? And has anyone gone through the process of planning, going through a planning process as a public water supply operator? I had to do this for the water supplies to plan a protection area around the supply. That's really critical. And then, how are these logging roads and skid trails and the tree removal in a forest, how is that going to improve water quality? Because that's our goal here, is to protect and improve water quality. So let's think about those questions. This is, and I know you've seen some slides, but I have a few more. These are all pictures that I took. I do a lot of hiking. I love the Notch Reservoir area, but I actually hike all over the place. These are pictures I took. This is DCR approved watershed logging. This is what it looks like. This happens to be in Peterson. This is just a few years ago. I took these pictures, maybe 3 years ago. That's what the skid trails look like. And these are pictures I took. I didn't get these off the internet. I went out and I hiked these areas. That's a logging. You've seen a landing area. You've seen what that looks like. It's very compacted, heavily impacted. And it takes, I'm going to say, decades or maybe a half a century for an area like that to really recover. It's so compacted. The soil is actually altered almost permanently, but Mother Nature does have an ability to recover given enough time. But damage can be done very quickly. It takes a long time to undo the damage. So part of this is the Mohawk Trail Woodlands Partnership. That's a project of the New England Forestry Foundation. And NEF, New England Forestry Foundation, has this climate smart program, their own brand. It's called exemplary forestry. That's what they call it. It's an example. And you'll hear that they're trying to do a demonstration forest here. That's an example. So it's really important to keep in mind that it isn't really what they say that counts. It's what they actually do that really matters. So here is an example of exemplary forestry practiced by New England Forestry Foundation on their own land in the Muddy Brook area. They have a wildlife conservation area adjacent to a wildlife management area, which is owned by the state. The wildlife conservation area is owned by New England Forestry Foundation, 500 acres, Two families donated that land, a 200-acre parcel and a 300-acre parcel. The families got, one family got $150, the other family got $300 or $400. New England Forestry Foundation immediately sold the conservation restriction to the state for $500,000. And then they locked it. The family really wanted it to be protected, but that's what New England Forestry Foundation does. That's how they make their money, and they're very connected to the state apparatus. So if you can get 500 acres for $300 and then turn around and sell it for $500,000, you're doing pretty good. This is a couple more shots. They logged, completely removed all the vegetation around the vernal pool. It wasn't certified, so that's okay. If it was certified, then they'd have to leave a buffer zone. And I mean, these are just pictures. This is an area in the Quabbin Reservoir, in the Ware River watershed, and that shows you that they just put their skid trails through wetlands. There's no consideration of soils, wetlands, Wetlands Protection Act. You just dump a lot of rock on it to give the trucks a skateboard area. And again, these are all DCR-approved watershed logging pictures. So let's get back to my question. How does logging protect water quality? Well, it doesn't. I mean, that's common sense. But the evidence shows that it doesn't. And these examples show that this type of logging does not protect water quality. So why is the logging being proposed here? That's really the question, I think, that we're all wondering. Why did this area get selected? And it went through this process, I'm going to use the word targeted. It was targeted by these organizations as a demonstration project. My personal feeling is, and you may have a different opinion, my personal feeling is that if they can go to the most protected areas and log them, then they will be able to go anywhere. If they can go to a place like this that has the highest quality hiking trail, recreational opportunities, and a reservoir, and put in a demonstration project so that instead of hiking down the trail and seeing nature, you're going to hike down the trail and you're going to see what they want you to see, which is, look how great logging is. They'll bring school children there. They'll demonstrate how wonderful logging is to try to convince the public. They're selling this to the public that this is what you should be accepting. That's my opinion, but that's really what I think what we're asking about is why here it seems like a completely inappropriate location. I just went for a hike there before I came to this meeting. I have hiked on it before in the past, and you have to scratch your head and wonder why. Who thought this up? And I think we've heard that it's because there's a lot of grant funding. For instance, the New England Forestry Foundation got $30 million from the U.S. Forest Service to promote this kind of logging in Massachusetts and actually in other parts of New England. $30 million, they're working on that. They've hired 7 new staff people recently to go out and promote these kinds of projects throughout the region. That's one reason. So I'm interested in hearing if other people have ideas. Why is this area being targeted? What benefit is it to the community, really? I mean, we think that there's going to be a lot of negative impacts, but how does it improve water quality? How does it improve the recreational experience? Things that we're wondering. Yeah, I'm interested to hear what people think.
Well, do you want to say it?
Go ahead.
So I'm working on the other side of the mountain in the Greylock Glen, and we're trying to protect the trails over there. that they want to build a glamp ground on. And I mean, one of your biggest things is this Bellows Pipe Trail. It's a historic trail. And are you kidding me? They're going to cut the trees down? I mean, it's tourism. It's you know, outdoor recreation, which a lot of people are into. And I think above the water, maybe not above, but the water is one thing, but I think the trail is huge. We're actually putting on a ride tomorrow around Mount Greylock using that trail for 65 mountain bikers. Sorry if you don't like mountain bikes. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. Just wanted to say that. And if you want to sign my petitions.
That bike thing happens every year though.
It does.
They have bikers up there on a regular basis.
It happens once a year. It's a fundraiser, yeah.
Well, I'm not from North Adams. I live in Williamstown, but I hike Bellows 3 to 4 times a week. I have a dog business. I run dogs up there. It's literally one of my favorite places to go because, you know, there's a lot of humans that don't like dogs. When they see me coming, they panic, and I'm able to get off the trail, and I'm able to run through the woods. So, yeah, there's some down trees and stuff, but that place is not dying off. There's animals, there's all sorts of beautiful things that you'll see up there. But getting back to your question, I think they target towns, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to insult anybody. They target towns that don't have the people running the town that have any education in this. They believe what they're being told by smarter, more educated people. I lived in Petersburg before I moved to Williamstown, and the water was poisoned. And I knew from the moment I bought the house there was something wrong with the water. I just thought it was dirty. I didn't know it was actually PFOAs. But you wouldn't believe what we went through. You would not believe the Board of Health, New York State Board of Health knew that the water had been poisoned 10 years prior. They were aware of it. They said nothing. They came to our town, they sat up there, and one of the questions I had asked them is, well, who were the people that were there 10 years ago that knew about it, and why are they not being held responsible? And this is what I was told. Let's not worry about that now. And so what I'm thinking is, now I've been told that the mayor is able to put a kibosh on this like that. She can just say no. Why is she not saying no? She works for the town. She's not working for the loggers. She's obviously not going to make any money. If she has to clean the water, it's going to cost you millions. It is not, now granted, we have to do PFOA stuff, so they're still handling it now. They're suing like 5 different companies, chemical companies. You guys won't have anyone to sue. You'll have the man who owns the property right there, who's going to have all that stuff clear cut, so he has a beautiful view of the water. And he's working for the water department. So it says to me that's a conflict of interest. He should lose his job immediately. These are things that, like, I just feel like you said, you're reading all this stuff and it looks like, oh, okay, it's all lies. It's all about money. The bottom line is they're going to make money from your town, they're going to leave, and then you're going to be stuck with what it costs the residents to clean the water. Your water prices will go up in Petersburg. It's very expensive for the people because they have co-ed systems, they have all this stuff. And yes, some companies help pay for that, but it doesn't handle all of it. And they're still, 8 years later, they're still in court. You guys don't even have a lawyer. It's like, so to me, I feel like maybe the mayor should be held accountable. So to say, that's fine, we can do this. If you need to sign something that says, if we need to have our water cleaned, you're responsible. So that is just my thought.
That is a great segue into my next topic, which is kind of the way that this is manipulated, and that is the governor, our new governor, put a moratorium in place on public lands logging on state lands. And she asked an expert panel to come up with a review of public lands logging. And there were 12 members on this panel. 9 of them were pro-forestry, logging, timber industry representatives. And 3 were excellent scientists, one which was Bill Lumont, who's been mentioned. And those 3 scientists disagree with everything that the other 9 had to say. And they could not reach consensus. But they put out a report that actually is pretty good because it talks about the disagreements. And this is a quote from them, and the other committee members are these 3 scientists, and they say that there's abundant science that shows that there's no reason for the division, in this case it's the Quabbin Water Supply Division, to actively manage forests to produce clean water. There's no science that backs that up. So when you hear people saying, no, we're going to do this for its science, there is no science, according to the scientists. Now the loggers will tell you something.
Glenn, before you start, I just want to make a correction. Thank you so much for sharing, but Tim is not the commissioner, he's not in charge of the water. He's the commissioner of public service. I just wanted to say that so we don't get the mix, so there's no mixed information.
Okay.
But thank you so much for your thoughts and your experience, and I'm sorry you had to deal with that.
So I just want to quickly talk about an alternative vision or an alternative to logging for this same piece of land, the Notch Bellows Pipe area, and why this isn't being considered. And I think the key that I have seen is that there has not been meaningful public participation in this process. And I mean it needs to be meaningful. They held a hearing on the 12th. That was not meaningful public participation. There has not been meaningful public participation in this process. So that's why we're here tonight. And what's a reasonable alternative? My proposal is that full permanent protection, as was intended by this purchase of this land to create a watershed protection forest, that obviously needs to be permanently protected. They thought they were protecting it when they bought it 100 years ago, whenever it was. But obviously, things changed. The trees grew up, they became valuable to people, and so they became targeted. I think that we could put a conservation restriction on this land, a forever wild conservation restriction, so that this would not happen again in 20 years or 30 years. There wouldn't have to be public mobilization against a bad idea and a bad decision. And there's actually grant funding available to do this kind of planning. I have talked with one entity that has up to $125,000 for planning grants for these kinds of forever wild conservation restrictions, because they're not cheap to do. They require a tremendous amount of field work, documentation, all of that stuff. So, that's a source of funding that the city would not have to pay to have this done. And the DEP, the Mass DEP, also provides watershed protection funding as well. There's also a thing called wild carbon credits. And if you put the land into permanent protection for a 20-year period, you can sell the carbon credits on the carbon market for 20 years. After 20 years, you don't get to sell them anymore. It has a limited lifetime. But that 20-year period would generate far greater income from the carbon credits, and it would not require the destruction of the watershed or the forest. It would actually allow the forest to continue to grow and to store increasing amounts of carbon and provide increasing benefits to wildlife and better protect the water quality. So what would that look like? There would be a local land trust that would be a partner in that process, and they would hold the conservation restriction on the land, and they would be responsible for enforcing that to make sure that the restriction, the things that are restricted, do not occur on the land. the carbon credits, and I'm going to use an example that is used by Audubon and New England Forestry Foundation on their own website. They used a project called the Tri-City Project. I've done calculations that indicate that it could be between $200,000 and $300,000 in credits over a 20-year period. And that money could be put into an endowment for the reservoir specifically to help maintain it, to help keep the water costs down, and it would also help North Adams meet its climate goals of reducing greenhouse gas. So the Tri-City Project is, well, this is probably more complicated, but a viable project would need to be about 5,000 acres, so the Notch would be part of that. It could be the Williams Reservoir area around that. It could be land in adjacent towns that could be aggregated together, and that would be the most viable and get the best credit value. And this could be, this could be a model. It is already being done by the watershed forest owned by Holyoke, Westfield, and West Springfield. Now they have more acreage between those three towns or cities, 13,500 acres. But they're getting about $2 million in credits over a 10-year period. And over a 20-year period, that would be $4 million. My estimates come out to the city could possibly generate almost $1 million if that 20-year period was put into an endowment or what's called an enterprise fund that was interest-bearing. And if the capital got interest and accumulated by the end of that 20-year period, there could be over $1 million in that account by leaving the forest alone. Now, again, that would be with some additional lands included in it, but a very conservative estimate would be closer to 300,000, 350,000 at least at the end of that 20-year period. That to me seems like an alternative that makes financial sense, it makes water quality sense, it protects the watershed, and it does not degrade any of the existing characteristics, such as the trail and other things. So, how do we do this? Well, we have to convince the decision makers, the people who are making these decisions, because I believe this decision has not been made. We have to convince them that this is the right thing to do. We don't need to rush into this because, again, damage can be done quickly. It takes a long time to recover and heal. So let's not do that damage. Let's have a meaningful public participation process. Let's get in some other people that have better ideas than folks that are trying to run this show. And then let's do a real honest analysis of what the potential is for putting this land into something similar to what Holyoke and Westfield and West Springfield did with their watershed units, which really is an example, like I said, that even Audubon and New England Forestry Foundation use on their own website to promote this idea for municipal forests. So I'll leave you with Henry David Thoreau's famous quote, "In wildness, not wilderness, in wildness is the preservation of the world." And I think we all need a part of the land to remain wild. And this area, adjacent to Greylock, and the water supply for the community, the best thing, the best outcome for this would be for this land to remain self-willed, because it is giving us gifts every day. Clean water is a gift. And we need to protect that. And the way to protect it, I believe, is to let it be self-willed and let it remain wild.
That's right.
But I'm going to encourage you, if you need to stand up or use the restroom or whatever, please do. We're going to go straight through. We have about half an hour left, but we wanted to make sure that there's really an opportunity for you to speak. There's various ways to speak. To make statements and share what you are, all of which is interesting. We could have made notes, but we're recording this so I think we'll capture your questions and comments that way. But I would say, if you can do it, your questions back to us, questions that you think need to be answered from your position and perspective, will be very helpful. And so if you can get to that, and if you can speak briefly, but we encourage many of you to talk for the next 20 minutes or so. And Glenn and I, there'll be some opportunity for Glenn to respond to where you're going with your comment and question. Yes, on the right here. I'll start in front and I'll move back after that. Yes.
I left out resident. I grew up in Williamstown. I was in that one of the questions I had is when you're talking about the carbon credit and saying it's 20 years, what happens after 20 years?
Because it's permanently protected.
It is permanently protected.
If it's permanently protected, then there would no longer be a threat to the forest, so those credits would end after 20 years.
But the preservation and conservation of the land continues.
It would, if it's a forever wild conservation restriction, that would be in perpetuity. The only way to undo that is for the state legislature to vote 2/3, both the House and the Senate would have to vote 2/3 to overturn that, which doesn't really happen, especially if your local legislative delegation is not in favor.
Another question I had was, one thing I know is that trees get to a point in their midlife where that's the best time to cut them. When they get older than that, they're stressed and they're no good for longer. So my question is, I mean, this has been so clandestine and underground, and I mean, I didn't know anything about it until recently. And it's been going on for years. Is part of the reason they want to do it now is because, they're no longer good now. You need to get it quick before it gets too old and you can't use it.
Now, I'm just going to say, I didn't go in and core the trees, but this is a pretty young forest. It's a recovering forest. I'd say it's juvenile, teenage, maybe young adults, but not near mid-age or midlife. Many of the trees up there that are marked to cut would easily live for another 200 or 300 years. Especially the oaks, they've been very long-lived. So I think what you have is there are small areas that were left from previous timber harvests, and those are the areas you go in and you see that they mark the biggest trees in those areas because they are valuable. On the international wood market, a red oak tree is incredibly valuable. That's, they'll ship those over to Japan or other places, and they're very, very valuable. And meanwhile, the citizens here will get $1.50, literally, and somebody will make a lot of money brokering this.
I saw hands that you had as well, then we'll go back to
In my car, I know because I do this. I didn't know in particular, but I knew that this would be the biggest mistake that was ever made. And what I would see out, and my question is, what do you do? Where do you go? You give us your science, but we took people here to do work. How do we stop it?
Well, we are a small group and need to be a bigger group, so if that can be a possibility for some of you, that would be wonderful. We are in the process of figuring it out, and we have a lot of resolve. So if you wanted to join a group that has a lot of resolve and ready to take almost any direction that is needed because of this preciousness, what was just mentioned by Glenn, this is a trigger property for letting all kinds of other properties fall to the wayside that this one goes. So it's it's the first one. And so it really needs to be stopped. So it needs to have every arsenal and plan is going for it. Yeah, I'm gonna,
Just to comment on that.
please, yeah.
I think when I first heard a lot of this information, especially from Glenn, I was very depressed as well. I turned off my camera and hugged my son. But I think you need to look around and there's an entire room of people here. We are here to make a plan to move forward. We're here to voice ourselves, and it's a very diverse room too. We have people who know the mayor personally. We have people who have a lot of stake in the land, in the businesses in town. And I think if we all use our own personal powers, our own personal connections, we make a bigger web. So we just keep growing the web. That's where I means. We keep growing the web. We have been doing this footwork, and we keep growing the web. There's a hope. I'm not.
Thank you, very, very important. Be kind to the cat, yeah.
Yeah, so
Nice and loud, please.
hello. And you said there's been a number of public meetings, and I'm wondering if you know if there's going to be another one, and when the next one is, if you know, or not. Okay.
To my knowledge, maybe others can speak to this, they have not been telling us very far in advance of anything, and to our knowledge, I do not know any of the conservation committee's big meeting we're waiting on when the Audubon Society and the logging partners will present the plan to the conservation committee, and that has not been announced to my knowledge, but definitely stay tuned with Facebook groups, Instagram group, our website. The second we know it's out, and we'll let you know.
It might be a point to insert a little bit of detail without trying to make it fuzzy. There are really, I'm finding out, three kinds of plans. There's a management plan and an operations plan, both of which are public and in the record on the town website and our website. But there's a third plan. What they don't tell you is the third plan is the most important. It hasn't arrived at this community. It dictates how many machines, what their size is, how they operate, what hours, what temperatures the ground has to be, how they cross streams, every aspect. And that is the impact. They denied access to this. They're going to do it. They're stopping the comment period on September 30th. It will arrive a week later with no public input or comment. It has got to stop. So that we have to put some urgency into it. We need to see that plan. We need to have a congressional review of that plan and have an opportunity to speak to that plan before it reaches the Conservation Commission. So it's called the Harvest or Cutting Plan. It's been made for a good while. They probably are tweaking it, but they won't reveal it, and they have a purposeful 10-day period when nobody gets to see it, and they sign it, and they start cutting it. So.
Yeah, I did talk to our state rep, and he said to go to every city council meeting, go to every Concom meeting. And you can go to the city website, there's a button right there that says meetings, and then you get right to their calendar from that. And so you can see when they're meeting, and if you click on those buttons, they usually have, when you get into the calendar, their agenda there. So some of those you'll have to wait till the end of the meeting, but then there's a time when we have about 10 minutes to talk. And he said it's really important to voice your opinions at both those meetings and talk. So as many as we can go to before this happens, that would be fantastic. We can go to the meetings, that's the best we can do.
I'm not going to avoid this side of the room. I'll take one more over here and we'll jump across. Yeah.
Just a question on that.
And please stand up, that'll help us.
Oh, yeah. Is the city council, do they have any power over overriding this, or is it just the mayor? Because I'm just curious.
If the question has a little fuzziness, but I'll start by answering, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but when there are money matters involved, and that hasn't been proven to be true yet, they do have some authority. But they say, and it looks like they don't have a lot at this moment. But because money's involved in the expenditure, it seems to me, ultimately, that if we know that it's going to end up in a cost of the town, this is something that the mayor is committing the community to. They need to be involved. So that's another avenue for sure. It's fuzzy. They're not sure they can get involved yet. Please, okay. Stand up too.
According to city ordinances, this is an operational decision between the Commissioner of Public Works and they get to make the decision. City council doesn't officially have a say in whether this.
Go the first two and then the third. We'll do 3 in a row here.
I'd like to give a little different perspective on this project. This is new to me. I just learned about this recently too, and I've been fucking boring by email. My background is in
historical archaeology. I'm a professional historian, and I'd like to give a little background about the history of this area. It goes back a lot further than people really think. Actually, the Bellows Pipe Trail was a road at one time. It was actually a thoroughfare from the Notch area to Adams. And actually, 1790 was actually laid out officially by the town of actually what would have been Adams, because North Adams and Adams were one at that time. But the thing is, historically, this area is significant because I did a lot of research for my undergraduate work and graduate work in the 1980s, and what I did while I was working for the TCR at the time, I did a lot of investigation using historical records to document historical homesteads on this particular area as well as other areas on Mount Greylock. And one of the significant parts about this particular area of the Notch is that in the 1760s, Jeremiah Wilbur, there might be some local people that have heard that name before, but he settled his homestead where the former Bird Bernard farm used to be. And he purchased over 1,000 acres in this particular area, and he also owned land on Mount Greylock. And he had a very successful farm in this particular area. And actually, I'm a little upset because there are several historical sites along the Bellows Pipe Trail. There's one, Jeremiah Wilbur's cemetery. Yes. And I was there and a few other people that lived along Bellows Pipe.
We were trying to find it.
Yeah, it's hard to get to, believe me, I had a hard time finding it, that was in the 80s.
It took me 3 tries.
Yeah, it's hard, yes, you know, I can't imagine how much it's overgrown now. But Wilbur, you know, when he died in 1813, he, you know, his estate was valued at $15,000, which back in 1813 was a lot, but, you know, he ran mills. We used the water from the Notch Reservoir because I've actually located stones, millstones in the reservoir. And so the thing is, what I'm upset about, and I understand everybody's opinion, I'm not for or against the logging, or against the housing. But in the 80s when I was doing my survey work, somebody had logged, and the stairs went right over some of the sites that I had documented. And I'm not sure how many people, especially the city, is aware that there are, and I file these historic sites with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. So this is what I'm kind of a big beef on, you know, because, you know, that's my background, and I'm big on, you know, sort of the history of this area. And that, you know, Thoreau and, you know, other people visited that area, and it was important to them back in the 1800s to preserve this area. And that's why the Greylock Park Association was originally formed, because as you had mentioned, that by early 1900s, the whole mountain was denuded. I looked at historical photographs, and actually there was one section on top of Mount Greylock where they couldn't log it because it was too steep. But the, so it's, you know, and then it was, you know, in the 30s, when the CC came, and they replanted various, you know, stands of the timber to try to, you know, once the farms were gone, because then the state bought a lot of those farms that were defunct, and then they preserved the land.
So in the plan, there's very little mention of the cultural history and the mix of it and the importance of it.
And that's why I wanted to come to this meeting to make it known. And the thing is, the only thing that I studied was the history of settlement from 1760 to 1900. But what about Native American sites? There's a possibility, and you know, there's advances in archaeology now where they use LiDAR. I'm sure people have heard that, where they can sort of scan over the forest. You know, they manage to clear all the trees out, and then they can see settlements. So,
Good, next step. Thank you very much. It's
Yeah.
very important. Yes. And then we'll bring that.
I'm Kim Howland, I'm from Cummington, the Cummington Tree Alliance, actually. We've been activated since last year when Eversource came along and just denuded our historic vehicles. And so there are a group of us in Cummington, Ashfield, Plainfield, Williamsburg, who we can all team up and come up with a political I'm happy to do the communication to the eastern slope, hill towns. Yeah, thanks, Helton. Roger's been out to help us. But we've got to start looking at this as a political project as well.
Yes.
And the other thing I just want to say is that there are alternatives to logging for construction of buildings, and that is to reuse lumber instead of tearing down all these beautiful buildings, school buildings, churches, tearing them down and sending them off to a landfill when the wood is perfectly structurally sound still today. So just don't believe that there's no alternative.
Getting as many people in as quick as you can.
I'll be quick, I promise.
Okay.
My question was just, I guess basically, who makes the final decision on whether or not this project goes forward? Is it one person in the city, is it multiple people? Who is it that we need to be addressing directly in order to get this not happening?
The mayor,
Do we know who that is?
the mayor.
The mayor says it is her.
Okay.
Mayor and Commissioner of Public Works can list her all the other people who, how this is, we put commenting on our website, they send them. The question is, I'm president,
So they're the people who we could be directing questions or concerns directly to about this project.
The comment is extended to Monday is opposed to. A mayor was when I went to the city council meeting this past Tuesday, she said she had already received 670 something. That we sent it over.
Where's the next one? Gonna get way back, okay.
Hi, my name is Erin, and quick run through, my great-grandfather was Harry Bernard, who had the Notch farm and ski trail, my brother Jimmy. Now, we grew up there since I'm in my 40s now. I was the age of 4. Tim Lescarpo bought property from my family, the land. He absolutely loved the area up there. You know, that is one of the amazing things and why people buy property up there is for the nature, for, you know, the wildlife, for the peace, for the quiet. I mean, I consider myself extremely lucky to have grown up there and been able to be surrounded by that nature my whole entire life, and just it literally was my backyard. My house was across the street. We didn't even have house numbers. We were R2D2 when we first moved up there. My aunt actually sent a whole bunch of information to the agricultural sites and stuff, the historical site in North Adams and stuff. They, when they lived up there, were approached many times by agriculturists who wanted to, you know, look for things and get relics and stuff. So hopefully that is not going to be falling on, you know, blind eyes and stuff. It was also sent to the mayor, but that's another story. The only question my aunt had. I'm not very good with politics. I'm not very good with, you know, all this stuff. I'm totally nervous right now. But my aunt wanted me to ask, do we know, because the logging is going to begin in November, they're trying to, you know, get it to meet in November, hopefully we can stop it. But do we know if there is like a penalty fee against the town if the logging is not started like at that time? Because
There's no contract.
okay, because that was something that we're like, you know. Okay, so there's no contract yet, and once the contract is set in place, isn't there, where there is like a time period where we are allowed to, you know, really push and like get things stopped or something? There's only a small time period?
That's the cutting plan, you have 10 days.
10 days, okay.
Yeah, but the contracts, they have a non-binding contract that they signed, and then also a contract with Mass Audubon Consumer Space, which was. But that's not something where they would lose money from that, I mean, Audubon or the student.
it would still break.
I'm going to go to Deborah in a second, but I'm like making a comment. You hold a lot of power should you get involved. If you're joining things
I
like
have sent the
planning.
mayor many emails and I have received a not so kind one back, but I
But that
am
helps.
doing everything I possibly can. I believe they're from the nachos that are here that, you know, we spoke about and stuff over this weekend, so I'm really excited to see their.
So I'm going to suggest, though, even beyond that, picketing,
I have put stuff up in my yard.
No,
I
and
don't
then
know the rules about
nonviolent
picketing.
standing in front of machines saying we are going to do that. That means the loggers won't find this of value.